there's a blessing and a curse to not having resources in the family. When it got to the point where I said, I want to go to film school, they're like, no, why do you want to do that? Do you go be a doctor, an engineer or something? All right, give me the money to do it. Well, actually, we don't have the money to do it, you know? It's fine, go figure it out. We get arrested sort of immediately. So we spend a long time arrested in jail in Somalia. But I was so traumatized. I was just drinking and I was getting drunk the whole time. Spike Lee came to South Africa to shoot, and then I bumped into Spike Lee there. And he was there with his crew, with truck. I guess seeing a Spike Lee with lights and cameras and sort of commanding so much power was the first time where I thought, oh, this storytelling thing that I have,
you can do it in this particular
I can do it in that format. In fact, I said to Spike, one day I'm going to be like you. And that's all I wanted to do ever since then.
Welcome to the Listen to Your Footsteps podcast. I'm your host, Kojo Baffoe. In this podcast, I speak to Africans from across a multitude of sectors, including business, art, culture, media, design, technology, advertising, and everything in between, delving into their journeys and reflecting on the lessons they have learned along the way. It's about gaining insight into why and how they do what they do. These conversations offer a treasure trove of takeaways on a wide range of topics including craft, relationships, wellness, parenting, entrepreneurship, and much more. My guest today is film director, writer, and producer Tebogo Malope. From working on adverts for numerous brands and music videos for artists, to directing the Netflix original series Queen Sono, producing and directing the Showmax original series Outlaw, and directing the documentary Rise, the Sia Kolisi story, Tebogo has carved a space for himself, not just in SA, but globally. Thank you for coming through.
Thank you.
Finally.
Yeah.
It feels like I say that a lot.
Yeah, I know.
But
you've been pushing.
Yeah.
I don't even know how you managed to pull this off today.
Yeah, that's a story for another day.
But thank you. That's usually my favorite part of any interview I have, when the people have to introduce me.
Oh, you like to be bigged up.
Yeah, and I think you missed multi-award winning. You should have sent me a draft.
Multi-award winning. Yours is one of the longer intros I've ever done. So
thank you for having me.
You're special in that way.
Thank you for having me, my brother.
So when did you know you wanted to be a filmmaker? And when did you know that was something that was accessible to you?
Yeah, I like that question. And usually when I get asked that question, I take it back. Because for me, it's not about filmmaking. It's about storytelling. Okay. I guess film is just a tool to tell the story. So the bigger picture is, when did I know I want to tell stories? For as long as I can remember. I think when I was about 5 or 6 years old, we were doing community theater. I grew up also to Central Western Jabav. Okay. In fact, where I grew up, there's a park there called Credo Mutwa Village. Yeah, I don't know if you've been there. Yeah. So you know the main gate of Credo Mutwa Village. Yeah. When you walk out the main gate, the second house from the main gate, that's where I grew up. And so we used to go into that park. That's literally where I was kicking around and, hunting birds and rats and stuff. And in fact, that's where I got to meet Credo Mutwa a couple of times, because he used to come there often and build those crazy statues.
Yeah, I was not fortunate to meet him.
Yeah.
And my wife actually had randomly a consultation with him, just very, very randomly.
Yeah.
And I've always been jealous of that.
I met him when I was very young, and he spoke cryptically. So as a kid, you're like, what is this guy talking about, right? So anyway, but I did get to meet him, get to shake his hand, get to hang out with him a bit and hear his stories. But there was a hall at Credo Mutwa Village where we used to do the sketch. So if tourists were brave enough to further deeper into Soweto after Vilagazi Street, whoever was brave enough, they would end up at Credo Mutwa Village. And so we would often have tourists there. And so as kids, we decided we're going to do these plays, and they'll probably give us some coins and whatnot. And so that's when the first bug hit. And I think the main bug was doing something and seeing somebody laugh or see somebody chuckle. And as a kid, you're like, oh, I did something that kind of touched that person at some level.
Yeah.
And that's when I really first fell in love. In fact, the interesting thing about Central is like, that was really the thing. It was, you were either doing community theater or you were playing football. And I did both, and so that's when the real story bug hit. I know exactly when the film bug hit. And Spike Lee came to South Africa to shoot. I don't quite remember what he was shooting. I must actually look it up. He was filming a documentary and he went to a couple of locations. The one location he went to was at Amphitheater. You know where the Soweto Theater is right now? Just opposite there's the Amphitheater. And that's where I think it was either it was Zinzi or one of Mandela's daughters made a speech there about Nelson Mandela refusing to leave prison unless, and so he went there to go recce it. So I'm guessing the documentary I was making had something to do with Nelson Mandela. So I would come from school and then go to the amphitheater and jog up the stairs and then go play football. And then I bumped into Spike Lee there. And he was there with his crew, with trucks. In fact, I'd met him earlier that day because I went to a school out in Sophiatown. And he was there. And I was like, so twice in one day. And I guess seeing a Spike Lee with lights and cameras and sort of commanding so much power was the first time where I thought, oh, this storytelling thing that I have,
you can do it in this particular way.
I can do it in that format. And I remember getting home. In fact, I said to Spike, one day I'm going to be like you. And then I got home, I told my mom that I want to do this thing called film. And of course she was confused. And that's all I wanted to do ever since then.
Have you met him since?
No. And I had a great chance to. I don't know if it was like imposter syndrome or what. But I said, you know what, I want to meet you when I have that one project that I think he's going to be really proud of. And I'm still working on it.
I'd love to be a fly on the wall for that moment. When you tell him, actually, this career was sparked by something, by just seeing you.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Our common friend, Musito. So I'm in New York and, I'm there by the bar where they always watch Arsenal lose. And it's right next door to Spike's offices. 40 acres and a mule. And so I walked across and I take pictures by the wall and then I go back to have a drink with Musito. And Musito's like, yo, actually Spike is coming over later. Oh man, I had cold feet. So I was like, yeah, I gotta go. I said, one day I'll meet you, but I need to meet you when I have a film to show you.
Yeah, the time, well, I mean, life is like that, right? Like when something's supposed to happen, I believe when something's supposed to happen, it will happen.
Yeah, I think it's gonna happen. And I also, maybe I'm overthinking it, right? Because it was such a critical part of my life. And I think I'm just, it's interesting because it's one of the shows that I co-created when I started. I did it with Amanda Lane. And I co-wrote, co-directed. It was a show called Tempe Pushers. And in fact, it was sort of loosely based on my life. I think it's still on YouTube if you go. I think Stu Mamchali was playing this one character that had a lot of references to my personal life. That Spike moment was so critical that Stu Mamchali's character in the series also had an encounter with Spike. So there's all these sort of seeds that have been planted. Yeah. So I guess maybe I'm overthinking like the moment where I see him again, gang, gang, gang,
Yeah,
I'm on the red carpet at the Oscars.
It's also like that, the line or the adage, sometimes when you meet your heroes, they can disappoint. And maybe also kind of, because it was such a pivotal moment for you in your life, not to negate that, but I'm sure he's met so many people in his life, and kind of to a certain extent the realization that maybe it wasn't as momentous for him as it was for you.
Yeah.
But there's still a value in that. There's still a value in those experiences. I was actually reading something yesterday where the person was writing about how the death of a friend when he was 16 actually transformed his life. Because because after his friend passed away, he's like, before he was kind of a responsible kid, smoking weed, living a particular life. And after that, he realized that he wasn't actually living life. And he turned his life around. Like he stopped smoking, started going to the gym, started focusing on school, whereas before he wanted to be in a rock band and that sort of stuff. But actually, that moment was transformational in terms of how it changed how he approached life.
Yeah, and I think maybe a part of me, I don't want to hop on Spike, but I think I really want to make him proud, and so it feels like a big moment that he could also gloat about, and say, yeah, I see that kid there, I met him in Soweto and look at him now. And I think perhaps that's part of the
I think it's like that Chadwick Boseman, Denzel Washington interaction.
Yes.
Where he walked up to him and he said, you may not remember, but when I was, you did this.
Yes.
And this is why I'm where I am today.
Yes, 100%.
So you go from, okay, I want to tell stories in this particular format. And you're going to school, you're in Soweto. How do you then realize that? Because I mean, you're in an environment, you're in changing, the country was changing, and for a while it did not seem accessible. But you've been able to kind of go through the process of realizing that aspect of it. Was there a point where your mother understood?
No. Only now, because now she sees the money.
Yeah.
But I think, there's a blessing and a curse to not having resources in the family, right? Of course, the curse is obvious. There's no food, there's no transport, there's nothing. So when it got to the point where I said, I want to go to film school, they're like, no, why do you want to do that? Do you go be a doctor, an engineer or something? All right, give me the money to do it. Well, actually, we don't have the money to do it, So it's fine, go figure it out. Literally, it's like, because there's no money, then we can't really dictate what you must go and do. And so that was the blessing side of how I started. And so I went out and I hustled. I remember for the film school that I eventually went to raise money for registration fee, I did a car wash run. I used to do people's gardens. I mobilized a group of people and I did sort of crowdfunding, on the ground, And I used to be a youth leader at the local church. And so a couple of people came together and somebody gave $50 here, $200 here. In fact, out of that crowdfunding, there's a couple that met and today they're married with 3 kids. And so that something great came out of it. And so then eventually I got the registration fee and I went to the film school and I gave them and I was 26th on the waiting line. And we used to go there every single day with, at the time, who was, he still is, who was like my life coach, Pastor Don Mutlung. And would go there every morning and park the car and go sit at the reception and ask, what number now? And closer to the opening of the school, we were about 8 or 7. And we stood on the day when they opened the school, we were outside and Pastor Don was praying for me. I think today he's called Overseer Don. I need to observe protocol. And they called my name. They said, you're in. People pulled out. And then I jumped in. I still didn't have money to buy the books or the manuals, but I was inside the class and that's all I needed. And so for me, it has always been a hustle. It was a hustle to get there. I used to travel by train from Central Western Jabavu to Braamfontein, jump off and walk, and, like film schools are structured in a very different way. You need laptops, you need cameras, you have after class sessions, workshops. You need someone to come pick you up late at night because you guys stayed late to do rehearsals. So it was like a series of challenges, but we pushed on, we hustled through, and and this story. Every time I tell the story, I get a little bit emotional because there are no funds pretty much at home. A very good friend of mine, Motlati Mafatsi, he's like a big star now. He was like Sichaba in Sitingo and whatnot, and we're still rocking today. Actually, he's actually one of two friends that I've known since I was born, literally. It's like when I left Paraguanat Hospital and they went to introduce me to the rest of the family, Motlati Mafatsi and Pako Makhabane were in that room. And so I've known them forever. Pako Makhabane is a renowned photographer today. So me and him, we used to travel by train. He was a year above me. We used to travel by train together, and every night when we had to travel back home, it would be like, okay, what are you going to bring tomorrow? I'll say, I'll hustle a loaf of bread. Can you hustle a bag of chips? Right, I'll see what I can do. If I couldn't get the money to hustle, I would cut the bread at home and take the half of bread and put it in my bag. And I said, bro, this is all I could get. It's fine, it'll work, And then we get there, we hustle with the other kids. And that's the type of sort of life that we lived to try and get through film school. Eventually, because the resources were so thin, we'd ran out, So by the time I was in second year, it was like, the hustle caught up, because then I hadn't paid fees, I don't know for how long. And so that's when it started getting really embarrassing, where security would rock up in class and say, Teboho Malope, and there's like 200 kids. Then you try to hide under the table. I remember this one time. I'm going to sound like I'm name dropping because all these kids are like famous now. But anyway, they were my classmates. Bongeziwe Mabandla is sitting to my right, and Malhloka Malay is sitting to my left. Thomas Gumede is there. Matli is over there. And I try to go under the table to hide. And shame, they tried to kind of, play it cool. But the security at the time had seen where I was, and they came up, come out. So I was dragged out of class numerous times. I used to sneak into class, like I'd jump into the boot of a car. This friend of mine would then cover me with blankets. So he'd wait for me at the corner as I walked down from the station, cover me with blankets, sneak me in, and then I'd wear like and sneak into class. And all I was hungry for was for knowledge. The blessing of that situation is that in the same yard, there was a company at the time called Curious Pictures. Today it's called Quizzical Pictures. So it was sharing the same yard with the school. Yeah. So each time they would kick me out, I'd go sit at the couch of their reception like that. I'll just sit there. And I'll see all these actors, these directors. I remember Kholi Nigiwe would just be like up and down, Brendan Loli, and those people, I was like, wow, And eventually, the lady who started it, Harriet Gafshon, this is like many months after me just randomly sitting on the couch. Who's this kid? Nobody knows. What's he doing here? Eventually, Harriet Gafshon approached me and he said, what's your story? I said, come, follow me. I'll go into her office. He said, what's your story? I said, well, it's a long story, but just put me on a set and you'll never regret it for the rest of your life. Just put me on a set. And then she's like, all right, I think I got something for you. So she put me on a set as a runner on set. And I was so crazy. I was so excited to be on set. I was making coffee for everybody, including the guy making the coffee. And so I said, I'm going to make sure everybody on this set remembers me. And that's exactly what happened. And so when Harriet had another show called Hard Copy 1, I remember Hard Copy, yeah. He said, that kid who was running around like mad on this one set, where is he? There he is. Yo, go there and be like a camera intern. And all that meant I was going in there to carry bags, clean cables and whatnot. And I said, that's it. That's the break I needed. And then I jumped in there, and I remember Gaupi Gabi, now she's like one of the top DOPs in the country, Jonathan Covell. I was a trainee under them, running around with BNC cables and still making everybody coffee. I remember Tim Green was one of the directors, Portia Kumet was one of the actors, James Ngo was one of the actors. And I was this mad guy, so excited every day. They didn't pay me, they just gave an allowance for transport. But I was the happiest man on the planet. I think I was only getting about $800 a month, or 600 actually. Yeah, it was about 300 every 2 weeks. And that was enough to feed my family a month. And I would buy like a train ticket to Park Station. And I think at the time it was about 80 rands a month. So 600 was more than enough. So my family could be fed. I was working. And then the first time I saw my credit, I think it was probably the last credit on the credit roll. But the first time I saw my name, my mom could not stop crying. And that, for me, that's how it happened. It's been a hustle. And interestingly enough, we're doing this interview and I'm celebrating 20 years since that. That was in 2005 when I was on the set of Hard Copy. And now it's 2025. It's 20 years of me as a professional filmmaker.
Have you reached the stage where it's not about the hustle?
No. And that's where, I need some guys like you that are way smarter than me. You're probably the most balanced and mentally balanced guy I've ever met. It's an illusion. I don't. I mean, the way I'm doing this movie now is a hustle, Spirit, shameless plug. Spirit the movie _
all of that stuff.
Go for it. Go follow. Buy tickets. Yeah, no. No, it's I said to my wife, I've got this niggly thing in the back of my head that refuses to let me relax. I don't know if it's, you've read every self-book there is, if it's the trauma. I don't know if it's because you come from poverty, you're like, I never want to go back there. I'm a father of 3. Every time I look at them, I'm like, whoa, I never want to see these ones go, Now, practically, it's impossible for those people to get to where I was. I've done enough and so much that I live a very comfortable life. You may know my personal life. I live a very comfortable life. But yet, I sleep at night and there's this bug in the back of my head, this worm that still goes tick, 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 tick. And I can't help it. I don't even know how to shake it off. Now, a part of me sometimes justifies it as God has called me, has placed me on this planet for a certain purpose. And there's no time, right? So there's a sense of urgency for me that I got to push, grind, right? I got to do what I need to do. In fact, that thing was amplified when my brother and mentor, Tebogo Malope, passed on.
Yeah.
I said, oh my God. I was like, oh my God, we don't have time. We got to go. Like, there's no time. Let's go. And I think his death was so personal to me because I knew how many things he wanted to do. And that hit me so hard. I said, there's no time. And that just amplified that sort of sense of urgency, that sense of hustle. And so I don't know when I'm ever going to get that rest, I said to my wife the other day, I think the only way that I'm going to rest if God puts me in a deep sleep like he did with Adam, because the Bible says he put him in a deep sleep and the guy was chilled. And when he woke up, there was a girl next to him. It was like, yo, look at that, So I was like, I need that level of deep sleep, And unfortunately, at the moment, I don't have it. And perhaps maybe I'm a little bit too hard on myself because I'm right in the middle of this movie that I'm doing. We've been doing these pop-up events you're seeing all over the place. We've done 12. by the time the movie comes out, we would have done 20. And so it's just this sort of, at the moment, I'm buzzing because there's this constant thing. So I don't know.
Sometimes it feels like, and we've had this conversation briefly, because you do approach every project like that. So yes, today it's spirit. But before, I mean, the last time I think we were at the, what's that, Advertising Week Africa or something, and you were on a panel.
That Kevin Hart thing.
Yeah. And you were in the middle of production and the same thing, kind of pushing and driving.
Yeah.
And, you know, to a certain extent, it feels like you'll get to that place. I think you will get to that place. But that is, I guess that's the journey of, that's the journey of life. And to a certain extent, while, for example, like Spike Lee sparked something in you, I didn't know Teboho well. I'd met him once or twice. But I see his legacy as being you and the work that you're doing. And, a couple of other guys, Tabang Mulea, Lebogang Gastaba, even Sphere. So like, he was able to create a space for you it feels like he was able to create a space for all of you to take that next step. To go from where you were, which you'd worked hard and built, to kind of go, okay, there is another level to this. It's not just you're going to direct Generations, you're going to direct this, you're going to direct that, and that's the extent of your journey.
Yeah, he played a very critical role, and look, he took a lot of hits. I remember I kept saying one of the greatest crimes in South African advertising is that he never won a gold at the Luries. He never won gold. The best he ever did was a silver for that Sasol ad. Remember with the kids with Dr. Kumar, computer Lamour. He only won silver for that. I was like, wow. So when he got that Lifetime Achievement Award at the Luries a couple of years ago, and his wife Balisa asked me to go on stage with her. She was like, I can't do the speech, like I need you. And thank God I was wearing this super dramatic hat, like I was rocking, so I was wearing these glasses, but underneath there it was quite intense because when I was looking across the room, it was so many Black directors in commercials. Myself, like you say, Tawamulea, Lewang Rastaba, Zintuli, Zweli Khatebe, Matsepo Maja. It's like the list goes on, Mpotwala, like it's like, and when he was pushing, there was literally at most 3.
Yeah.
And so he took a lot of hits so that, because the normal rhetoric at the time is like, no, we can't trust. They don't have a lot of experience. You can't even trust them with big budgets, blah, 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 blah. And then against all odds, he proved the skeptics wrong. And so then that was dealt with. Hey, a Black director can handle big budgets, can tell stories, can lead. That was dealt with. Like, it's over now. That's no longer part of the conversation. And so it helped us. So when we entered the conversation, that wasn't even a conversation. Yeah. And so he played his part. I would have loved to see a Teboho Malope feature film, which is what he, the next thing he wanted to do. I would have loved to see a series for kids, because then once his kids started growing up, he was like, oh, it'd be nice to do like a kiddie series. There's so many things, and the stuff that he wanted to do to give back, foundation wise, and teach back, and but I'm sure,
like I said, for me that's what legacy is. When my father passed away, for example, in trying to make sense of it and life, I came to the conclusion that, because he was also somebody who did a lot for people in terms of creating foundation, in my opinion, not acknowledged. It wasn't acknowledged enough. But how I made peace with it was his legacy is all of us out in the world doing stuff. And that's the only real acknowledgement he needed. And for example, I wrote about it when I wrote a book, but there was a young Lesotho man who reached out to me on social media probably a month after my father passed away, or a month or two. And there was a fellowship in the US, and to get this fellowship is it's a big deal. It's a mission, and he had just been awarded it. My father made him come to his office and sit down because he kept on saying, "Have you written the essay? Have you filled in the forms?" And he wasn't doing it. So my father made him sit down in his office and in front of him do all of that.
Wow.
And now he had just gotten the scholarship, and he was like, "I'm messaging you to thank your father through you because he's no more here." And now when I look at him, and we still interact on social media every now and then, but he went, studied, finished his degree. I think he eventually did a master's. His wife, I think it was then his girlfriend, she moved to the US. They have 2 kids. He's teaching. So he's built an entire life. And so when I look at that, for me, that's an example of legacy. That's an example of the impact of individuals on other human beings. And so, like I said, I didn't know Teboho well. I knew of him more, and I'm friends with a lot of you that he opened the doors for. And once again, I look at that and I say, his legacy, that's his legacy. When I first met you, you were directing Proverbs video for Writers Club.
Yeah.
At what stage of your career was that? Did you finish school? What happened with Curious Pictures?
Yeah. So I'm in second year and I'm getting kicked out of class every other week. Harriet Gavshon puts me on the set of Hard Copy. I smash it, and I knew I would smash it. Then Natalie Haroff comes on the set of Hard Copy as I think she was doing second cam at the time. Well, I think she was pulling actually on second cam. I don't quite remember. So Natalie sees me, Takunda's wife, and she's like, "I like this kid." She's like, I'm doing like an international show. Do you want to come and assist me? I was like, let's rock, And I get there and then I meet somebody else. I meet Trevor Calverley, who was a senior at film school, but now he had just graduated. Now he's working with Natalie. Hey, by the way, I'm doing a thing called this. Let's rock. And then this leads to that. And then before you know it, I'm on Home Affairs as like a camera assistant and at Home Affairs. And then, I start operating here and there. So literally my trajectory goes from, I've just been kicked out of class. I find myself on a film set as a camera trainee. And then I go from camera trainee to go VT op, I'm going to geek out a bit. VT op.
Well, then you must give us the full words.
Okay.
Because you're sharing all these acronyms.
All right.
Most of us don't know what all of these things are.
All right. So as a camera trainee, I'm basically running around making coffees and cleaning and carrying these Pelican boxes and, and then a VT op, there's these guys out here, they've got screens that they're monitoring, I'm assuming. So the guy that connects those screens on set, that's the VT operator, right? So it's like visual transmission. And then I go from VT op to now focus pulling, right? And focus pulling is we don't autofocus on set. And so if you're blocking somebody and they're moving like this, they're always in and out of focus. But there's no autofocus. So you literally need somebody manually on that lens pulling the focus, making sure the image stays sharp. And so I'm like focus pulling, and I became one of the really good ones, right? Because focus pulling has a lot to do with math and how to calculate distance, right? So I can tell you, sitting here, from here to that camera, there's about 3.5 feet from where I'm sitting. And so on the lens, it's written in, so we learn, all our lenses are in American. So we learn how to read in feet and inches and stuff, right? And so you read on the lens, I can see that, oh, from this lens to a Kojo is probably about 4 feet. So this one is slightly closer to me. This one is further, right? And so if I'm trying to keep you sharp, I make sure that the sharpness is on 4 feet. And so because I was really good at math, so I can like easily do that. Then I became so good at that, then they bumped me up. They made me camera operator. And I started operating camera for Trevor Calverley. And then I was one of the first black camera operators on a GakeNet Afrikaans show called Griespat. And there was the Oppermans that were doing it. And in fact, it's quite an interesting story, because the director on that show, his sister was my directing lecturer at film school. First term of directing class, I don't want to mention names, but first term of directing class, she looks at me straight in my, because everybody goes to film school to either be a director or be a star. So, class is plus 300 people, just under 400. And when they say, who here wants to be a camera guy? Who wants to be an editor? Who wants to be a director? 90%, right? Who wants to be a star? 70%. And so as an elimination process, we did these sort of quick fire moments with the directing lecturer. And she sat across the table from me and looked me straight in the eyes, and she said, "You do not have the temperament to make it as a director. And I will suggest now you find something else." And actually, that's really one of the things that lit up the flames, And I looked at this lady, I said, "Man, you don't know my God." I said, "Oh, man, I felt a fire in my belly. I went, Shabaya." I started whooping and hollering, I said, "This woman." And then her brother then was the director on this GakeNet show. That show went so well, where I was first camera operator, that we got given another show, and now it's like a long-running soapy. But at the time, it was a 13-part series called Reshaped Rugby. I'm sure you've seen that. You checked it. Yeah.
I'm not the target market.
Yeah, so I go on Reshaped Rugby as a camera operator for Trevor Calverley. But I do the job so good, Trevor gets another big gig, and they go, "But we're getting second season." Trevor says, "But I've been shooting with Tebza for, he knows my lighting style, he knows the camera style. Just go with him." And so the director gives me so much, put so much confidence in me and so much faith. And he says, "Go for it." So I reckon I was the first black DOP to shoot an Afrikaans drama series at the time.
You are listening to the Listen to Your Footsteps podcast, a podcast in which I chat to Africans from a cross-section of society and sectors, including art, culture, design, business, and creativity, to name a few. We delve into their journeys, the decisions they have taken to get to where they are, how they do what they do, and everything in between. Essentially, we go wherever the spirit takes us. Now let's get back into the conversation.
And I was young, and the Oppermans refused to translate anything into English. So the call sheets, the scripts, the schedules, I'm like, oh my God, even the contracts are in Afrikaans. I said, "Hey guys, can I, hey man, you're shooting an Afrikaans show for Afrikaans people, so That's your problem. So every night I'd have to like spend another 2 hours with like an Afrikaans dictionary going, what does this mean? So that's how I would prep for the next day. And that was my first DOPing gig. So I became a DOP. I shoot. But towards the end of this specific director says, man, but now he doesn't know that I went to go study directing and writing, that I've my calling is to be a director. He never knew. I never mentioned that. I just did my gig. Came to me at the end. He says, there's a certain way you frame for performances and for moments where at times you may not necessarily go for the pretty shot, but you look for that moment in somebody's eye. He says, that's more like a director's instinct, He said, like, I don't know what the future holds for you, but you got, your temperament is that of a director. Wow. So, right? Yeah. So that was like, all right, cool. Like, all right, cool. I see you. I said, cool. And then after that, I went and I shot a couple of other things. And then I went into directing. Now, the story of how I got into directing is also crazy, and I'll tell you. But fast forward to later, and I win a SAFTA. My first SAFTA as a director was for the show Tempe Pushers. Guess who's on stage giving me my certificate? Is that director. So he's like, what did I say? Yeah. And so everything for me feels like some kind of divine script. And that's how it all played out.
The thing that fascinated me, or the thing that I noted, which has stuck with me since I met you on
Writers Club.
My only video vixen moment in my entire life.
You were fantastic. You were amazing.
But was how you had storyboarded every single scene. I mean, it's just a music video, and as a music video, like the concept was amazing. It really reflected the content of the song, and yeah, it's a plug for the other Teboho.
Yeah.
I mean that video is still on YouTube, and every now and then, I mean, my kids saw it once and they thought it was hilarious, but just because they see their father as the difficult guy who always says no, not. They're surprised that I had a life before, but was how you storyboarded. How do you prepare to shoot?
Yeah, that's part of it. And by the way, thank you for saying yes. Because I wanted this sort of the Avengers of the top writers in the country. You
got that shot at the end.
Yeah, that I was like, that's all I want. I wanted that shot from the guys in theater, in film, in literature, I just wanted that. I remember now, like poetry was not. I was like, oh my God, it's only Kayadlanga and Eusebius that said no. And sometimes I feel sad because Eusebius is no more. I was like, man, that would have been nice if Eusebius was in the mix, and Kayadlanga, I'm putting him on blast. Anyway, maybe there'll be another chance, Kayadlanga. But so thank you for saying, yeah, that's the what you just mentioned is one of the things. And I think because I went through the whole process of the filmmaking, I went through the whole filmmaking process from sort of camera to then writing to then producing to then assisting every department to then shooting myself, is that I consider every element in my process. It's laborious. I think that's the word. And it's really like, for the team that I work with, they love it. Like, for instance, in commercials now, my treatments are like 100+ pages. So they read it. Once they read this Bible, they know exactly what I want to do. So I don't constantly have to like backing and forthing. And so for them, it's a great tool that I'm so specific. And so it is. That's how. In fact, for this specific film that we just did, because I wrote it also, then I storyboarded, then I went to set, and then I shot it myself also. Then I sort of, Georgina and Lily and them, but I was also like, I was sort of rolling out the marketing at the same time as I was raising funds. At the same time that I'm speaking to streamers to buy it, at the same time I'm speaking to guys to distribute for cinema. And then I'm still doing these talks, with these kids. And so it's kind of because I've got a bird's eye view of the whole ecosystem from ideation to distribution platforms to I kind of have to be that pedantic. So that's what I do. And I think that's my strength. But it's really exhausting. It's it's the first time I'm in camera since I started growing these white hairs. This has happened in the last 2-3 months, and because of I'm very pedantic in what I'm trying to do. Oh, earlier I wanted to mention how I ended up directing, if I can go back to that story. So a crazy friend of mine, Kaiser from Lesotho actually, but now moved to Canada. One day he calls me. I think he got my numbers from Harriet actually, at the same Harriet caption. He said, "Hey man, I'm gonna send you something. Just look at this and tell me if you're interested in telling the story about this kid." So it's a CNN clip of this Somali pirate who's just been arrested off the coast of New York or something. And he's chained like this to his ankles. And he's got this sort of heavy movie style military guys, next to him. Probably like 8 or 12 of the guys and official looking guys, It's like, who's this guy? All these cameras flashing at him. And he's smiling. He's just like, I'm like, what? Just him smiling. And my friend said, bro, we gotta go, let's go tell the story. So anyway, so it turns out this guy's like a 15-year-old Somali pirate who just hijacked the big ship that belonged to the Americans. Now he's in New York in a prison. But they sentenced him as an adult, so it's complicated. So it's like, can we go to his village and go interview his siblings, his mom? We can get in touch with them just try to understand how does a 15-year-old become this notorious? And not only that, like, why was he smiling? So we called it the smiling pirate, And I leave South Africa to try and go into Somalia. They're like, no, you can't go in there. It's a red zone for us. So you gotta have to, it's either you're with a United Nations envoy or something, but it's impossible. I'm like, yo, we go to Kenya, we go, you know what, we're gonna find a way to get in this. So we find this sort of black market Russian run like airliner. They fly us into this little village called Galkayo in the south. It's like a province called Puntland. And so we basically go around everything to try and get the story. But we get arrested sort of immediately. So we spend a long time arrested in jail in Somalia. Eventually, they get us out. We still don't really know who intervened. My assumptions is it was the Canadian government, because when we left the same way we came in, these Russian guys were like parked there in the desert and snuck into this thing. We first went to Djibouti. They said we have to stay here for 24 hours and we must go at like 4 a.m. again so we can sneak into to Nairobi. And when we got there, my friend gets taken away. And then I go to the South African embassy to be like, then I meet this Lesotho lady who's running that office. I almost died. She's like, no,
Basically.
it's like,
That's the
I'm
response.
like, oh my God, she's like starting to scream at me, But I was so traumatized. I spent because our return ticket was only 2 weeks later, so we had to stay there. I was just drinking and getting drunk the whole time to try and like, literally I'd like wake up, there'll be a bottle next to me, I'd drink to to get myself out again. And all I could do over the time was just bottle this side, laptop this side. I'd start writing my experience, Um, I'm getting all emotional. And so I spent almost 2 weeks in Nairobi, high and tripping the lights out and drunk, but writing my story. And then this one night we at Westlands. So I'm at this club. It's crazy club. These wild neon lights, like blue, red, purple. A lot of them are flickering. It's like, it's like hundreds of people, but it's like dark, beautiful skin, girls. It's everybody's sweaty. I'm drunk. I've been drunk and high for I don't know how long, how many days now, so I can't even tell if I'm here or not. And remember that scene in The Matrix 2, Zion, when they go to Zion and it's like, like it felt like that. It was like, oh, black skin, like sweaty, black, dark chocolate, and I'm like at the corner, like, yeah. And then I look right in the distance in the corner. I see this guy with like snowy white hair, with like a clean snow white shirt, tall, facing the other way, past all these beautiful dark-skinned people. I'm like, Jesus has come to fetch me, right? I'm like, yo, tonight I'm going. So I push through these guys. I'm like, what's that? Where's that? What's going on? And I get to this corner. It's Angus Gibson. He's the first South African that I see since the ordeal. And he's standing there with Amanda Lane. So I hug them, in tears. And I cry. I think I cry on Angus's shoulder. I don't know for how many minutes, And he's like, what's happening? I can't even vocalize. I said, it's cool. I'm going to send you what I wrote about the experience. And so I sent both of them an email same night I get home. And they read this thing, and instead of going, yo, that man went through a traumatic experience, they go, yo, that man can write. And pretty much from that, what I wrote, Amanda Lane invites me to come co-write Tempe Pushers with her and to direct it. And that's how I got my first major directing gig. Yeah. From being arrested in Somalia to my first directing gig to my first directing SAFTA.
It's always interesting. One of my favorite quotes is paraphrased, I think it was Steve Jobs, is that we connect the dots looking backwards. Like when you're going through an experience, you're not really seeing, it's only later on with hindsight, you kind of go, okay, this happened. And out of that, it feels like this happened. And out of that, feels like that happened. But it's also never linear. It's kind of like all over the place.
What that gives you confidence with, actually, I like this, because listen to your footsteps. I've always liked your title, because it kind of gives you confidence to take the next step. Because you look backwards, you're like, things kind of worked out, even though I wasn't intentional about it. So what happens if I become intentional? If I just push ahead? And I think because a lot of things happen in hindsight, like, oh, wow, okay, God was in control regardless. So what happens now if I challenge him? And I go, okay, you did that before. Let's do it bigger now. And it's been sort of my modus operandi since then, is to challenge God and say, you did it with me being dazed and confused. Now do it again and do it bigger.
What is your life like between projects? Because also you talk about kind of bigger, like each of your projects feels like the next one is always bigger. The next one is always bigger. And when you're doing the project, yes, you're consumed with it. But what happens in between? Is there an in between?
Well, I think family is a project, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so I bounce between the film project to the family project. um, there's a group. Who introduced? Was it you or Musito? I think it must have been Musito. Dope Black Dads.
Yeah, it was him.
Yeah, I think
The group I've left twice,
you left and you came back.
and then I left again. But that's a story for another day.
So I think I'm grateful for that group for a lot of things. Is that sort of dad conversation was never part of my. It was never on the table for me. It was just like I'm just gonna figure. My dad left me when I think I was 10. So I pretty much grew up without a dad, and I always thought I'm gonna figure it out myself. I don't have a template. I'll wing it. And whoever's out there that I can ask questions, I'll find some mentors and ask questions. But besides that, I'll figure it out. So it was never part of the conversation. And for the first time when I got into that group, it became part of the conversation on a daily reminder. And so I think in between my film stuff, I try to be a dad. Sometimes I beat myself up because, like for instance, when I did this NBA docu-series that's about to come out with Barack Obama and J. Cole, I said, this is going to feel like name dropping. I don't know. It's just my people, man. What else must I do?
It's fine. Some of us can name drop you. How's that?
So I felt really bad because I went to 10 different African countries in a period of just under a year, and my wife was pregnant with our second child, and I always go, I hope one day it'll make sense to them why to do that. And then I do like the low bar excuse, like, but I didn't leave them like my dad. At least I'm here, you know what I'm saying? And so I think I still need to figure that part out, so that's why I'm saying I'm learning to keep being a father as part of the conversation. Lewang Rastava said something interesting. He says this often. He said, before I became a dad, I was everything else. I was either I'm a director, I'm a businessman, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a that. Then I became a dad, and then being a dad became like the first thing. I'm a dad before I'm a filmmaker. I'm a dad before I'm a businessman. I'm a dad before I'm a, And I think about that often, and I don't know. I feel like I haven't quite figured it out. I'm trying to, but in between my projects, that's what I try and do. We live in a beautiful place, which is like a little farm estate, and so you go out cycling with the kid, go out to the river, go badlalega muzunki, see them climb trees, and those beautiful moments are really beautiful. I do find sometimes I have to push myself past that seeking that rush, because it's so quiet, in that moment, and you start getting like, why am I not, screaming at someone for not delivering this? Why am I not, And I still need to purge that somewhat. So in those moments, I'm in those moments. So they exist, they're there, but I still find even when I'm in them, I'm a little bit, I'm not yet fully in them.
But
and
I think the fact that you think about it. So what was useful about the group is, like you're saying, the conversations and the honest conversations to a certain extent. Because my line is, if we allow them, our children enable us to become better human beings. Because it's not a destination, right? It's a journey. And as long as you are reflecting on it, I personally believe, I do a lot of stuff seemingly wrong in my eyes and in my children's eyes. But as long as you're reflecting on it and you're working on it, you are a step ahead.
You talking that conscious parent book talk now that I think I put down after 5 chapters.
Well, I haven't read the book. I write about it in my book. There's my plug.
There you go.
I write about it in my book because I've spent a lot of time thinking about it. And it is that, like, the important thing. And it's any aspect of our lives. Like, I believe that as long as we're engaged, as long as we're questioning, we are moving forward in our own way. My way won't be yours, and yours won't be mine. Because also a lot of people actually just kind of go through the motions and without reflecting on it. And I personally believe that reflection is the most important part of it. Like reflection, where enough times I have done something or said something, and then like 30 minutes later has gone, no, I shouldn't have gone about it that way. And then the next time kind of, let's say, try to be, in inverted commas, better, like a better version of myself as a father.
Yeah, it's this question, what we're talking about, ties in with everything we spoke about. You said, when do I switch off the hustle? And yeah, I do like your point about reflection and thinking about it, and at least, I guess, having some kind of intention to be it. The hustle part of me, that tick, 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 tick part of me usually overrides, right? It's like, every time I leave, it's like I had to go to Durban last week to go push Spirit at the movie. At Spirit the movie _ when I had to go push it, my son, like, he held my leg and said, please don't go. He said, oh man, and he started crying. I said, no, I'll be back. I'm always back. He says, I know you're always back, but I'd like to maybe spend another day. So it was very difficult. But then that sort of hustle thing, okay, if I don't go, you're going to be poor like me, you know what I'm saying? Well, not like that. And so, so I think what you said to me about, I'm going to find it at some point, the calm, like, okay, you've done, relax. I think that point and this point, I think when that happens, that's going to be a happy marriage. Because then I don't think, when I'm swinging my kid and I'll have that worm in the back of my brain that's making me not be in the moment. So I think there's a happy marriage between the 2 points you just spoke about. Somewhere in the future. Hopefully the future is now. But by the looks of it...
Well, you talked about intention, right? It's being deliberate. Being deliberate about these different things. In the same way that you're very deliberate about hunting Spirit. You're very intentional and deliberate about your work. And it's about finding that medium. That place. So that's what I wish for you. And
how did you figure it out?
There was a moment some years ago, and I've talked about it a bit, but there was a moment when I was editing the magazine and I was traveling every month, and I was out at least twice a week for press events. And even when I was home, like weekends was when I got a chance, because as editor I was doing a bunch of stuff, but I also wrote. So you'd find like weekends is the only time I had the space to sit down and write. And I was reading a book called The 4-Hour Work Week. There's lots of debate around the value of it, but it introduced me to this idea of lifestyle design, and this idea that you can craft the life that you want to live, and without waiting for, oh, I'm a millionaire now I can do these things. So it was that, and 2 moments where the one Saturday I was sitting at my desk writing, and my family walked past my office on a Saturday morning, and they were like, bye. And I'm like, where are you going? And they had a full plan for the day.
Wow.
And so they left, and I was home alone. I did my writing, and then I was just chilling home alone. And I realized that I was living a parallel life to my family. And then also around that time, I was traveling to Germany. And because I used to do a lot of press trips, I literally went to Germany I think I was in Germany for a night. I flew out on a Monday, landed a Tuesday morning, went to an event that afternoon into evening, woke up Wednesday morning, went to a museum, straight to the airport, flew back, landed on Thursday.
Sure.
But when I was dropping my son off at school, I said to him, I'll see you on Thursday. He said, where are you going? And I said, I'm going to Germany. And he was like, okay, cool, bye. And just walked off. Like it wasn't a big deal to him. It was just, shut, you do you. And I went to work, and I came home, had a shower, took my suitcase, went to Gautrain station, went to the airport, got on a plane. When I came back, I landed early on the Thursday morning, took the Gautrain, Uber home, showered, went to work, and I saw my family that evening after work.
Sure.
And there was nobody to see me off. There was no, hey, bye. It was just, it's like I could have been single. It was like I was a single person going on a trip. And the penny for me was, if I say I'm working for my family, but I'm not present, then actually what is it all for? And so I gradually kind of made the decision to rejig my life. And it's come with sacrifices. Like I've had to make major sacrifices in certain things, including money. But that was the kind of start of my journey in terms of how do I craft and structure my life in a way that works for me, works for my family, works for the lifestyle that I want to live and that I'm looking to build. So yeah, that for me was the spark. It was like over a 6-month period.
Oh. Okay. Well, I hope the spark hits me one day. I'm sure it will. I think it's in there somewhere. But I think from the spark to the action.
I think the fact that you're at the stage where you realize certain things. It still takes time to actually actualize it. But the fact that you realize it, the fact that you're on a farm area, it means a part of you recognizes what that looks like and what's needed.
Yeah.
So yeah. And just to kind of close up.
Oh, we're closing already.
You can tell me
how long has this been?
Been just over an hour.
Oh, I thought we were going on for just 1 hour. Wow.
Tell me about the movie that you've been punting so much, because from my understanding, The Roots is like a music video.
Yes.
And knowing the attention to detail you have in creating even just a music video. At what stage do you go, actually, there's a film in here?
So a couple of years ago, I did this music video, question mark. Interestingly enough, today this man is not liked much. His name is Nota, but he played a very critical part in. It's funny. I was looking at a video posted by Stanley Danger, celebrity businessman, and I actually think it was yesterday. They had a younger listening session, and he said, many years ago we're in the same room, and Nota is there, and I was Zaz, and everybody else, and everybody's like loving and hugging on Nota. Today, everybody wants to kill Nota. So I was like, time is a funny thing, But I'm at gym. I hear this song for the first time. I play it on loop. And I think by the time I get to the 6th play, I'm already seeing the music video. Like literally the visuals came at me. Like they flooded me. 20 minutes or so later, Nota calls. And I see his name. I answer. I'm like, so yeah, is this about the music video? He's like, yeah. I'm like, I'm in. Like that's literally how we did the first music video. How we did the music video. And then I get to set, and all I wanted to do was to basically, it was a portrait of a people, of a township, but it's like Katlehong, right? But a portrait of a township Katlehong, you can copy and paste to Tembisa, to Kwamashu, to Mlazi, to Kaelicha, to Google it, it's pretty much, you can take that treatment of spirit in Katlehong and put it in any township in certain, I'd argue in the SADC region. And the whole point was to, I called it Spirit in 3-part harmony, which was, we are resilient people, against all odds. When President said, we will not be bullied, we are resilient people. I wish after that he would say spirit, but so that says, this is who said, it was like a bit of a study on sort of our resilience. The second part was we spiritual, like we've got this, it's in our national anthem, right? We believe in a higher being and a higher power. We believe in God, and so what is that? So even in the music video, you'll see there's all these visuals that speak to that. And then the last part is spirit. This is a booze, we like a bit of a bottle, So also, what is it? Like, what is our relationship with this babe? Like, so the music video was essentially trying to capture a portrait of a people using those 3 elements. Now, when we did the music video, I wanted to use only real people. So we have over 200 people that we got in Katlehong. All of them are real. So the guy that's getting baptized was actually getting baptized for real. The Sangoma who did the thing is the Sangoma who was doing the people for real. So literally everybody. The only thing that we faked there was the slaughter of the chicken. We didn't do that. And also the guy who's drinking the beer while he's burning. We had to get a stunt double for obvious reason to do that. But as I was shooting the thing, I met very different characters that stuck with me. So the one character was a priest. Then we got to Zone 6. We met a girl there who's like a baddie. But she was like, no, I'm actually like a SRC leader. But my friends forced me to come here. She's the girl that drinks tequila in the music video. And then the guy who drinks the bottle and burns was more the story around xenophobia. And which is also like a reflection of who we are. Like that's, as South Africans, we can't shake that. We have to really go into it. Like why is that a thing? So those 3 characters stood out. Actually, about 8 characters stood out, but those 3 were the strongest. And so ever since then, I've always wanted to expand the story because people that, ever so often you meet people that go, why are they banning this guy? But you're like, but why did you ban that other guy? You know the story. So I thought maybe I should expand on that story a bit, right? The one priest, we walked into his house. He was emotional and in tears. And he was going through a lot. But because we came in there and we had a little bit of a location fee, he's just like, but instead of telling us his problems, he said, could I pray for you guys? He wanted to bless us. Yeah, I was like, wow, this guy is like, so I said, okay. He said, I'm going to pray. And I said, can you film me as you pray? He said, go for it. And so you see him in the music video. He's actually praying for real. And so there's a character called Priest in the film, and we sort of expand on that story. Now, Priest's character is like a miracle working priest, which is a story that's very closely connected to my personal life because my dad was that guy. who's a miracle working priest. You see him in action. Blind people are seeing, this is happening, stuff that I went through, seeing my dad do it in action. And but he gets home, his wife is sick, and he can't do nothing about it. Right? So this thing works for the people, but it's not working for your people. So it's like an exploration of, it's like that conflict. It's like, you know, you're close to God, but distant from your family. Like, how does that work? And then the other character is this character we call Fallist, you know, who's like a student activist, fees must fall and whatnot. So the film Spirit is a multi-plot, multi-character film in the veins of like your Amores Perros, your 21 Grams, your Babel, your Traffic, your Crash. These 5 stories are running parallel to each other. And then at some point they crash into each other, into this sort of explosive emotional peak. That is what Spirit is about. And all these characters, I don't give them names in the film because they actually were real people in the music video. So in honor of the real people, I'm emphasizing that's Boxer is a fictional character of a real person. And so that's how we made this film. And we made it, most of it, a lot of it, 90% of it is people just coming on and saying, we want to help. And that's how we are where we are.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, my man.
Salute. It comes out in April. So people must go to @Spirit the Movie _ There's pre-sale tickets out. Cinemas all over the country and a streamer near you. Thanks, my boy. Appreciate you.
Welcome to the Listen to Your Footsteps podcast. I'm your host, Kojo Baffoe. In this podcast, I speak to Africans from across a multitude of sectors, including business, art, culture, media, design, technology, advertising, and everything in between, delving into their journeys and reflecting on the lessons they have learned along the way. It's about gaining insight into why and how they do what they do. These conversations offer a treasure trove of takeaways on a wide range of topics, including craft, relationships, wellness, parenting, entrepreneurship, and much more.